Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino. On this episode, we talk with creator and author of 100 Acts of Love, Kim Hamer. On April 16, 2009, she watched her 44-year-old husband take his last breath. During his illness and after his death, she was amazed by the helpful ways their coworkers, bosses, friends, and family supported them. Kim started calling their actions acts of love. And it was after this death that Kim, as an HR leader, noticed the managers received no guidance when navigating cancer or death on their teams. In response, she became the author of 100 Acts of Love, a girlfriend's guide to loving your friend through cancer or loss. An easy-to-read book filled with 100 practical, quick, and effective ways to support an employee, friend, or coworker. We get into all of this and more. Enjoy the interview.
Hi, Kim. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thanks for taking a minute out today.
No worries. Happy to do it. I'm excited.
Me too. So before we get into 100 Acts of Love, I want to know, how did you survive COVID? Now that we're coming out of it, how did you do during that period, and how has it changed the way that you live your life?
That's a really great question, as I'm sure many guests have said. I think what really helped me during COVID was to actually take the time to slow down, to sit with the uncomfortableness of not doing much, and to really focus on what I did have. One of the things I started was, I'm sure you've heard this story before, is Zoom. We have started having family Zoom calls every other week. And my family's all on the East Coast, and I love them, and I don't get to see them enough. And all of a sudden, we were seeing each other, including my cousins and my aunt and uncle. We were seeing each other every other week. And it was so delightful. We really built a relationship that we didn't have and couldn't have had without COVID, because, we got to really get to know each other. So that was really helpful. I had a primary group of friends who I spent time with. We were sort of our little bubble. And so that was really, really important. And really slowing down, the result of my business now is a result of my really slowing down and focusing on, what is it that I want to do with 100 Acts of Love? How does this, I've always felt it fit in somewhere with my HR career, and I couldn't really figure it out, but it started to actually bud right in the beginning of 2021, when we were still, in lockdown. So I think that the slowing down and dealing with the uncomfortable feelings of not trying to go in 5 million different directions at the same time was really how I ended up, and getting comfortable with that is really how I ended up surviving it.
So let me take you in front of a group of third graders right now at a career day so I can get a better handle on exactly what you do. And one of the kids looks up and says, "What do you do for a living?" How would you answer them?
So you know how some people get cancer or get very, very sad, or sometimes people die in their lives. Well, all the people around them, their friends and the people that they work with, they all want to help. And I show those people how to help and support the people who are who are feeling really sad right now.
One of the things that you discovered was the kindness that you got back in April 2009 when you lost your husband. And that seemed to be a transformative moment. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Sure. So my husband was diagnosed in 2006. And at first I was hesitant to really share the information with a lot of people. I'm not really sure why I was hesitant, but I just felt hesitant. And as we started to share the news, people started to do things for us. Things like, they would bring over food, which is the obvious, but they would pick the kids up from school and take them on play dates, really fun ones, like the kids got to go to Disneyland quite a bit. They offered to help take my husband up to the cancer treatment center, which was a huge help because it was a 45-minute drive one way. I mentioned one time that the light in one of the kids' rooms was not working, and so they sent over a handyman to take care of the light so that it worked. So they started doing these little things, and and it felt like every time they were doing it, they were saying to myself and my husband and my kids, it's an act of love. We love you. So we love you. We're sending over the handyman. We love you. We're going to fill your car with gas. We love you. We're going to take out the garbage cans. We love you. We're going to, pick art up from the cancer treatment center. We love you. Here's another lasagna. And so I started calling them acts of love because what I realized very quickly early on, my husband's cancer wasn't just about him or our family. It was also about our community. And it was about allowing that community to do what communities do best, which is support people when they are going through a tough time. And the other thing I realized is that some people knew exactly what to do and other people had no clue. And most people didn't have a clue. And I watched the people who didn't have a clue struggle, right? They really wanted to say something nice and they said something mean and they really wanted to help and, they brought over, I'm going to make a joke about lasagna again in just a second. They kept, saying, if you need anything, let me know, which is the least helpful phrase to say. And so after he died, I started to really reflect on the fact that I was one of those people before my husband got cancer. I didn't know what to do or what to say. I didn't know how to be helpful. And so I realized, there's a lot of information out there about there's information about being a caregiver, there's information about having cancer, there's information about being a widow, but there's no information out there wasn't at the time, about how do you support somebody who's going through this. And I often say, if 1 in 3 of us are going to get cancer, how are the other 2 going to help? And that's how that journey started. I wanted to help the other 2 figure out how to show up and be helpful. Then I went back into the HR field, and I realized the same thing happened in the business world that was happening in my personal world. People didn't know what to say or what to do, and I watched managers struggle, and that's how I ended up, really helping managers understand how to support employees dealing with cancer and all those other things, and also how to be productive.
So all of this had to start somewhere. So talk to me a little bit about your childhood and how these seeds began to get planted for you.
Ooh, I remember a moment when I was first married and feeling this pull to do something. Actually, I remember all my life I have always felt like I was a little bit different than everybody else. And I'm African American. I grew up in a predominantly white community, and I always thought that was the reason I felt different. But, parents would say to me, Kim, you're so effervescent. You've got so much energy. It's a joy to be around you. It's a joy to have you in our home. I remember babysitting for people, and people say, our kids love you. Like, you just have so much, like, they just relate to you, and you relate to them so well. And so looking back, I can see little pieces of that, little pieces of just wanting to bring joy and comfort to the people in my lives, the people I touch. And I happen to have an extroverted personality, which means that I get my energy from other people. So combined with those 2 things, I just always felt that there was something that I could do to help people feel better about themselves and about their lives. Just to bring a little bit of joy. And it's funny, I have never made that connection before you asked that question. But now that you've asked, I think that's really where it started from, just having a base of feeling like I could help people, I could make a difference. And having that reflected back to me with the way that people spoke, with the way that people talked about how they felt being around me.
That's wonderful. That's a great realization. And we're also about as good as the shoulders that we stand on. Who has been a role model or a hero for you in your life?
Oh, gosh. I know this is going to sound really cliche, but I have to say my husband. And the reason is because he was a kind of guy, very quiet, very stoic, but he put his sight on something and he just went for it. And he didn't tell everybody he was going for it. He didn't make these grand announcements of what he was going to accomplish. He just focused. And how he showed up didn't matter. And I remember he told me a story about how he finished dead last on his very first bicycle race. And to me, that would have, back then, when he shared that story, I thought, well, I wouldn't have finished. I would have said, I'm not finishing last. That's too embarrassing. I'm not doing it. But to him, the fact that he finished was really the point. And so watching him, to him, it wasn't about being in the pain of chemo and the difficulty of it. It was about setting his sights on the line of, I'm going to finish this chemo treatment. So he had this incredible space of patience and just step after step after step. And I actually emulated that after he died.
So how does the 100 Acts of Love work? How have you implemented and how does it work, with feet on the ground?
Sure. So there's two different sections. If you buy the book works in a way of, look, we all panic. We don't know what to do. We need some type of resource. And you grab my book, you open it up, and it's designed in a way that allows you to quickly get a tip. So you open it up and it says, buy a gas card, gift card. And you're like, you shut the book, you go out the door, and you do the thing. So that's how that piece of it works. I designed it so that you could quickly access a quick thing to do. Or when you read through 4 or 5 tips, you came up with your own idea. So it's also meant as a creative a creative board to jump off. The second way it works is in business. So I help managers understand how to show up for their employees and be productive. Because honestly, most managers, when they hear that their employee is going through depression or loss, whatever, their first thought isn't always about that person. Their first thought is, oh crap, I've got this big project that they are a key person, do, and now I can't do it. So it's really helping the manager understand the balance between how do you be compassionate and show your employee and the team, and how do you lead a team to support somebody dealing with this crisis, as well as how do you get stuff done, right? How do you be productive while you're in crisis in a way that lets your team know that you care, but also sets guardrails and, hey, look, we still have a job to get done. So that's how it works in both those realms.
So let's get behind the person that created this, and I want to know, everyone has a perception of you, an idea of who they think you are, your family, your friends, clients, those that read your book, but you live your life. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think I'm really messed up in the head.
We all are, aren't we? Man.
Exactly. My perception of myself is that I am fearless, but not in the way that we typically think. Over the last 13 years since my husband has died, I have been slowly facing things with courageous. So I'm not fearless, I fear less. And every single day I find myself fearing less. And really what it is, that's not even fully true. I fear, but I don't let that, but I'm learning to walk through the discomfort of that fear. I think something that people, I'm outgoing, but what people don't know is I have real anxiety when it comes to going to parties and thinking about things to say to people. I want to connect with them. And so I actually, on my phone, I have a list of questions that I ask perfect strangers or people at parties. So it's not the old, what do you do for work, or how do you know so-and-so? Because I want so bad to connect with people. I don't want to actually waste time with oh, that sounds so interesting, when it's really not interesting to me at all. So I actually have a little bit, I don't know if you call it social anxiety, but I just have a little bit of my heart starts to palpate. I get really nervous. My hands get really sweaty and clammy. I think I want people so badly to feel good about themselves. And sometimes, sometimes that means that I end up doing things for people that I shouldn't be doing. That I should let them, we all have to get to where we are. We have to, whatever it is that's happening to us, that has to be the thing that motivates us. We can't be motivated from anyone on the outside. And so I think as a fault of mine, especially with my kids, I sometimes do more for them than I should because I feel guilty that they don't have a father, but also because I feel like I just want them to get to the good part quickly. And I feel like if I help them along, they'll get to the good part quickly, but that's not always the case.
So, Kim, if anybody wants to know more about the 100 Acts of Love, your book, anything related to your world, where can they go?
So I would highly recommend that they go to 100actsoflove.com, and it's the number 100. But if you want to know, look, I know I mentioned it briefly that if you say anything, let me know is the worst thing to say, and that usually shocks people because most of us say it to somebody. So if you want to know why it's the worst thing to say and 4 other common things that we say to people who are dealing with loss or cancer or depression that are really bad things to say, I want you to go to 100actsoflove.com /what not to say. It's no spaces, no capitalized, no capitalizations, what not to say. 100actsoflove.com, what not to say, and you can get that free download of 5 things never to say to anybody dealing with cancer, loss, or depression. The other place you can reach me is on LinkedIn. I do LinkedIn Lives every Thursday. I am so happy to field any questions you might have about helping a colleague or an employee or even your boss who's dealing with cancer, loss, or depression at work. So that's another great place to reach out to me. You can DM me or you can reach out during my LinkedIn Lives or leave a comment, and I will respond to your question during one of my LinkedIn Lives. And also I'm on Instagram at 100actsoflove, at 100actsoflove. So that's another place you can find me.
Beautiful. Kim, thank you very much for taking time out. I appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you very much, Joseph. It was really great talking with you.
Thanks for tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, literature, business, spirituality, and music from around the globe. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on YouTube. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.